Okay, what the heck are calories in and calories out? This video is going to explain exactly what they are, exactly what they're not, and how you can use that information to get to that weight that you want to be. We got to start with the boring stuff. So calories in and calories out is based on a thermodynamic equation of the universe. And it states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can just be transformed. The same with matter. What that means to us is if the energy that we get from the chemical bonds of food equals the energy that we expend on a daily basis, for instance, our weight will stay the same. Think of calories in and calories out as money, and your body is a bank account. And currently in your bank account, you have $1,000. Now, you deposit money in. If you spend that same amount of money that you've deposited over, let's say, a month, then at the end of that month, you're going to have $1,000. Money does not just appear or disappear from your bank account. Just like your bank account, your body can have different streams of deposits. You can have your main job that gives you money. You can have your side hustle that brings in some money. You can have investments that bring in money. So what are the calories or deposits that we make for our body? We get energy from our food. The energy in food is stored in the chemical bonds of food. There are three main energy sources that we get from our food. Okay, so first there's carbohydrates. These are cyclical chains of carbons and hydrogens. So you can think of them as circles. When there's only one circle or two circles attached, these are things like glucose and fructose, or what we think of as simple sugars. When there are many circles attached in a chain, these become more complex, and these are referred to as complex carbohydrates. These are found in your starchy foods. Think potatoes, bread, pasta, rice. Those are complex carbohydrates. There's a type of complex carbohydrate or chains of circles found in plants that we are not so good at digesting. These chains of circles are called cellulose fibers, or what we refer to as fiber. We'll come back to why that is good to know. So then there's protein. So unlike carbohydrates, which are repeating units of circles that are the same or similar, proteins are made up of subunits called amino acids. There are 20 unique amino acids. They have different chemical structures that can come together in different lengths and sequences to give you different types of complex proteins. Lastly, there are fats, which form long chains of carbons and hydrogens that are very compact. In all of these images, where you see a line, that represents a chemical bond. When our cells in our body break down those chemical bonds, plus some extra boring stuff, that is how we get energy out of our food. Notice how we can fit in way more chemical bonds in a small space with fats than we can with protein or carbohydrates. What this translates to is per gram of fat, there are 9 calories of energy. Whereas for protein and carbohydrates per gram, there's only 4 calories of energy. Put another way, you can eat the same weight of food, so grams of food, of fat, and get twice as much energy for your body than if you ate that same weight in protein or carbs. Going back to our baking analogy, it's like our real job pays us in Canadian dollars, but our side hustle pays us the same in American dollars or in euros. That would be so good for our bank accounts, but maybe not exactly what we want for our bodies. So I'll be using this banking analogy throughout this video. It's probably a good time to state that when something is good for our bank account, generally it's bad for us trying to get into a healthy weight range. So just remember, when it's good for our bank account, for instance, it's making our bank account fatter, probably not what we want for our bodies. Now, our very important point is calories in does not mean the calories that you eat. It is the calories that make it to your cells. What does that mean? When we put food into our mouth, not all of it makes it to our cells. If you didn't already know, that is the reason that we go number 2. I love it when I make myself laugh. These videos. Okay, first of all, our stomachs break down chunks of food, but they don't do this 100% efficiently. So the more food that you eat that started as a whole food, the less of it that makes it to your cells. For instance, think of whole peanuts versus peanut butter that is partially already processed or chewed for you. This has actually been shown in a scientific paper when it comes to eating peanuts, whole peanuts versus peanut butter. Then that food gets into your gut, but it still needs to be broken down even more to make it into your bloodstream. The only things that are broken down into short chains or single subunits of amino acids, single circles of carbohydrates, think glucose, and then short chains of fats called triglycerides make it into our bloodstream. From there, they pass into our bloodstream, and then they have to make it through our cell membranes as well to be utilized for energy. All right. If it's not already obvious, a calorie is just a unit of measure for energy. Kilojoule or joule is another unit of energy measurement, just like the dollar is a measurement of money or currency. The way the calories in food is determined is that food is placed into a bomb calorimeter and literally just burnt. And whatever the measurement of that burning is, that is just objectively the calorie potential that whole food has. If you were to completely burn it, how many calories could be released from it? That is not necessarily the calories that go from that whole food into our cells. Remember that. When people say not all calories are the same and therefore calories in and calories out doesn't work, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I totally understand where people are coming from, but by getting a deeper understanding of what it means and how we can use it to our advantage, we can get a lot out of this equation. For example, when I was talking about fiber earlier and how we're not very good at digesting it, foods that are high in fiber, although objectively may have a lot of mass or weight or high calories in the chemical bonds, because those calories don't make it into our cells, in practical terms, foods high in fiber are low calories for our bodies. Going back to our banking analogy, it's like the government withholding taxes so that money never makes it into our bank account. Bad for our bank accounts, good for our bodies. So what happens when our cells have more energy than they need? Well, firstly, our bodies like to use protein to build muscle and other cell machinery. Then they generally turn to glucose, try to use that first for their immediate uses. And if there's extra glucose, they actually make that into branched chains called glycogen. And we store glycogen in our muscles primarily. And our muscles look more bubbly when they're full of their glycogen stores. So it's a good thing when we store glycogen in our muscles in terms of aesthetically how we look, as well as in terms of health terms. If we have more glucose than our stores need, then that glucose is converted into fat. And any additional fat that we have, that fat is stored in our fat tissue called adipose tissue. Your body stores about 2,000 calories in glycogen. So thinking of it in a different way, it stores about 1 day's worth of calories in your glycogen stores. The rest it stores as fat, and it can store days, months, years of fat on your body as compared to glycogen. Why do our bodies so greedily store fat? Because throughout all of human evolution, 200,000, 100,000 years, minus the last 50 years, and maybe for some parts of the world, this is still true. You are infinitely more likely to die from starvation than you are to die from overeating. So evolution favored every mechanism it could to enable you to store as much fat as you can. So to recap, calories in is only the calories that make it to our cells. And they include protein at 4 calories per gram, carbohydrates at 4 calories per gram, and fats at 9 calories per gram. Foods high in fiber are low calorie because those other calories don't make it into our cells. And if you eat the same weight of food that is primarily fat, you're going to get more than twice the amount of energy for your body than if you ate foods primarily of carbohydrates or protein of the same weight. Okay, we know what we need to know about the calories in part of the equation. What about the calories out? How are we spending the money in our bank accounts? Calories out is comprised of 4 main spends. Side note, in science, calories out is often referred to as total energy expenditure, TEE, or total daily energy expenditure, TDEE. So just if you see those, it's the same thing as calories out. Okay, so there's rent and utilities. You have to have those to have a place to live. That is your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR. It's essentially, if you just lie down and do nothing, all of the energy it takes to do unconscious processes, breathe, pump your blood, etc. Your BMR is dictated by 2 things. One, we have some control over, the other we don't. The one that we don't is your genetics. Some people are blessed with amazing genetics and just happen to have a high basal metabolic rate, whereas others don't. As you can see in this graph, where on the horizontal axis it plots fat-free mass, you can think of this as a proxy for muscle mass versus basal metabolic rate, and each dot represents a person. There can be two people that have relatively the same weight, or at least muscle weight, and have vastly different BMRs. Here, a difference of 600 calories. But the second one that you do have some control over is your muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the higher your basal metabolic rate is. This is the same graph, and as you can see, there is a linear increasing relationship between the amount of fat-free mass, aka muscle, you have, and your basal metabolic rate. Now you may be thinking, yeah, but I don't want to be bulky or muscly either. Here's the thing. Muscle is not only more energetically demanding than fat is, it's also denser than fat, which means it takes up less space than fat. Put another way, if you take two people that are exactly the same size in the clothes that they wear, etc., and you were to weigh them, the person that has more muscle would weigh more and have a higher metabolic rate, which means they could eat more and stay that size than the other person. The next biggest contributing factor is NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Thermogenesis or thermogenic just means burning energy. So non-exercise activity that you do that burns calories. This is all the things that we do above just lying down that we don't really think about. It's the fidgeting, it's the talking with the hands that we're not thinking about. It's moving through daily life without thought about how you're moving. This is kind of like all the automatic payments that are coming out of our bank accounts that we don't really think about. We all have that friend that has like 100 subscriptions that automatically come out and they have no idea where their money is going. Bad for our bank accounts, awesome for our bodies. Now this is again primarily driven by genetics and behavior. If you are a naturally fidgety person, you could be burning 200 to 400 calories more than someone who's not fidgety. Again, this is really predetermined by your genetics. Now, because I categorize this as unconscious movement, you're not realizing that you're doing it, or you don't have to think about it to do it. There's not really much we can do to change this number, but we can with the next one somewhat. The next one is exercise activity thermogenesis, or EAT, which is really poorly named, unfortunately. Now, this is any type of intentional activity that you do. Anything from standing instead of sitting, walking, to high intensity exercise. If you consciously think about it for it to happen, it falls in this category. This is like our fun spending money. You know, if you want to go shopping, you want to go on vacation, you want to meet up with friends, there's some planning that goes into that. Now the great debate. Can you exercise your way to a lower weight? The answer is a little bit, but it's really inefficient and there is a ceiling. So the answer is yes, it is a lever that we can pull, but it's not the biggest lever. Let me explain. Let's say you exercised and you know for sure that you burned 500 calories. Our assumption is you have net increased your calories out by 500. What scientists have shown is our bodies can sense when we've increased our calories out, and they will go to our basal metabolic rate and decrease it. If this doesn't happen like the first time you exercise, but let's say you've added an hour of exercise every day for a week, eventually your body catches up, realizes this, and starts to decrease your basal metabolic rate. For example, our bodies may decrease our BMR by 200 calories, finding savings here or there, and so we've only netted 300 calories extra burned. It's like you spent a little too much on a shopping spree, so over the next month, you find ways to decrease your utilities bill so that you offset some of the money you spent on that shopping spree. Again, good for your bank account, bad for our body. Not to beat a dead horse, but so much so that after a certain level of additional physical activity that you add on, your body just doesn't expend more energy. So as you can see on this graph, scientists measured individuals with increasing bouts of physical activity, which is on the horizontal axis, and then total energy expenditure out, and it eventually reaches a plateau. No matter how much more exercise you do, barely adds any energy burnt out. And if you're asking, why does our body do this? It goes back to that argument that starvation was far more likely to kill us for the majority of our evolution. And so our bodies have found out very smart ways to conserve as much energy as possible. Exercise is still a lever we can pull, right? So we already know that having More muscle increases our BMR, and our BMR makes up the most of our calories out. But also, 300 calories is not nothing. Now, it's much easier to get those extra calories from exercise by tracking your daily steps, trying to get 10,000 steps a day by incrementally increasing your activity in a way that feels easy to you, going for an additional 10-minute walk, maybe a couple times a day, stairs, parking far, all those little things that add up. That tends to be easier than deciding, if you don't currently exercise, to start exercising 1 hour a day. The last component is the thermogenic effect of food, so calorie burning effect of food. To digest food takes energy. You have to put in energy into the system to get energy out of our food. And each macronutrient needs a different amount of energy to break down. Macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fat. Fats require 0 to 3% of the calories they comprise to be broken down. So for instance, if you eat 100 calories of fat, 0 to 3 calories were used for digestion. 97 to 100% of those net calories will be used for energy by your body. Carbs require somewhere between 5 and 15% of calories to be broken down. And winner, chicken dinner, protein requires somewhere between 20 to 30% of calories to be broken down. Think of these as bank fees. If you want to deposit money, sometimes there's a conversion fee, a deposit fee, this fee, that fee, and some fees are higher than others. Let's do a practical example. You have two people. One person eats 50% fat, 40% carbs, and just 10% protein. Person number 2 eats 20% fat, 40% carbs, 40% protein. And they both consume 2,000 calories a day. Same number of calories a day, comprised of different macronutrient composition. Person 1 will burn 210 calories just from digesting their food. Person 2 will burn 376 calories from digesting the same number of calories, but different composition. Said another way, they have consumed the same number of calories, but person 2 has burnt 150 more calories than person 1. Generally, when people think about or talk about metabolism, they're thinking about all the unconscious processes that we do to burn calories. So they think of BMR, they think of NEAT, and they think of thermogenic effect of food, if they even know that exists, those three. But technically, the definition of metabolism is, I'm going to read it, I know, boring, but I think this is an important point, all chemical and physical processes in the body that use or convert energy. That includes all of your calories out, including your intentional calories out based on the composition of the foods that you eat, as well as the additional exercise or activity that you do. So technically, to increase your metabolism, you just need to increase one of these 4 components. And for at least 3 of them, you have some say in the ability to increase them. Okay, so what have we learned about calories out so far? The proportion of macronutrients that you eat impacts your calories out. You can increase your basal metabolic rate by increasing your muscle mass. That exercise does help, but more is not always better when it comes specifically to weight loss. Targeting 10,000 steps a day is probably the easiest way to get the most out of exercise, thermogenesis, or calories out from exercise. But other forms of exercise, especially if you like them, will work as well. There you have it. What calories in and calories out actually mean. That's it, right? Well, if we were robots, yes. But because we're not, we're humans, there's one more factor we have to consider when it comes to weight management, and that is human behavior. Like it or not, you nor I can ever do something for very long that we don't like or we don't find easy to do. I could give you the perfect plan to be your exact perfect weight. And if you don't like doing it, or if you don't find it easy, it ain't happening. That is why 8 out of 10 people who do lose a significant amount of weight regain it, and oftentimes more than where they started from. Now, human behavior is very genetic. We have evolved to behave in ways that increase our food intake, and some of us more than others. For example, some people find food tastier than other people, so they're more likely to overeat tasty foods, which happen to be more caloric. Some people find the feeling of being full very pleasurable, more so than others. Again, increasing the likelihood that they'll eat until they feel full, as opposed to when they're no longer hungry. So we can use human behavior and cues in our favor. Your body basically has two major mechanisms it uses to interact with food. The first is by taste, how tasty something is, which is generally dictated by how much sugar and fat it has. The tastier you find it, the more dopamine you release in your brain, which is the neurotransmitter for more, making you want more to move forward towards the thing. You can think of tastiness as the way that your body and brain approximates calorie density, how much calories something has. The tastier it is, the more caloric it probably is. The second is how stretched your stomach gets, literally. There are mechanoreceptors in your stomach that when they stretch, send a signal to your brain that you're full, there's no more capacity, don't put any more food in the system. So trick number one that we can use is to eat foods and liquids that fill up our bellies quickly but are low in calories. The second trick is to make those foods and liquids as tasty as high calorie foods. So we still get that dopamine hit, we still get that satiety signal. We really enjoyed that. Trick number three is once we're almost full, having a small amount of high calorie foods so that we are still enjoying our lives. Okay, how do we put this into practice? Step one, use an online calculator or a weight management app to determine your maintenance calories, the calories at which you need to eat to stay the weight that you are. We are then going to create a 500 calorie deficit from that number. That is your budget. So here is an example. Let's say I put in my height and my weight and my activity level. My calculator says I can spend 2,000 calories to be at maintenance. Subtract 500. I can consume 1,500 calories to lose weight. Step two, try to get at least 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight that you want to get to. Protein helps keep and build muscle so you can increase your BMR. It burns more calories than the other two macronutrients. It only has 4 calories per gram, so less than fat. And people generally subjectively feel fuller eating protein than they do other macronutrients. Okay, so for example, I want to get to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. I weigh 150 pounds. That is 105 grams of protein. If I convert that to calories, that's 420 calories, I think. That is non-negotiable. That is like my rent. I gotta pay that. Step three is to split up the remaining calories that you have after you've figured out your protein, however you like, between carbs and fat. Remember, we cannot fight human behavior, so you have to eat in a way that you like and that you find easy. There is a reason the only drug that has en masse significantly decreased people's weights isn't one that increased metabolism, it's one that changed human behavior. It just made people want to eat less. For some people who love vegetables, they can just eat lots more vegetables, get some protein, and that works for them. For others, they need to have something carby. They need to have some rice or some bread. Again, as long as you fit it within your budget, do it however you like after you figured out your protein. That's the essential. My second time beating a dead horse in this conversation, but this is a really important point, so I'm going to say it again. There are many roads that lead to Rome. Find the road that is easiest for you. Easiest, not perfect, easiest. Calorie budget, protein set, easiest from there. This is like figuring out how to spend your money on fun things that you enjoy after you've paid the essentials, after you've paid the rent and you stay within your budget. Same idea. So some things to consider to help you get there. So first of all, you need to feel full. We need to get your stomachs full, and it's got to be tasty to you. You've got to like it. So firstly, eating foods that you like that are high in fiber. These are going to fill up your stomach. They're going to send that signal to your brain that you're full, but you're going to get substantially less calories to your cells, making it low calorie. So any veggies that you particularly like, make sure that you're getting those. Getting whole foods or foods that are not processed means that your body has to take more time and energy to break those foods down. Less of those calories get to your cells in that case as well. Also, it slows gastric emptying, so you feel fuller for longer. So any form of food that you could get in the whole form as opposed to a processed form. Again, the example I gave earlier was peanuts or nuts in general versus nut butters or peanut butter is a great strategy to go with as well. Having a mix of fats, proteins, and carbs often takes more time to break down than if you were to have a solitary macronutrient like a simple carb. As an example, let's say you have an omelet with some bacon and an apple in a meal versus some pancakes, maple syrup, so on. The pancakes, maple syrup are primarily sugar, a bit of fat probably in there. Even if they have the same amount of calories, your stomach will probably empty slower with the first one than the second one. Non-caloric drinks like diet sodas, coffee, water, flavored water that is non-caloric, tea. These are all great ways to fill up your stomach with a meal or prior to a meal that don't add calories. One of my favorite ways is you can find food swaps for foods with similar texture or taste, but with way less calories. For example, if you love cooking with rice and you love cooking, you can actually opt cauliflower rice for regular rice, figuring out a blend of spices that you enjoy, and you'll get reduce the calories by 80%, a very significant amount. And always leave some calories in your budget for treats that you like. These are higher calorie foods, just small amounts. Make sure this is towards the end of a meal where you're already almost full or full, so that your fullness signaling can compete with your dopamine signaling, but that you're still enjoying your life. Now you're trying to figure out, how do I figure out how to put these into meals that I actually like that fit within those steps? One of the easiest ways I think that you could do this is figure out the 10 meals that you eat most often. Most of us eat the same kind of 10 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner over a span of 2 weeks. Write them all down, write down the ingredients. Figure out just by looking at the ingredients if there are any easy food swaps that you can make that are lower calorie. Are there any meals there that are inherently low calorie to begin with? Are there any that are high calorie? Cross those out or try to eat them less often. Ask yourself if you can increase the veggie portion and or the protein portion of the meal while decreasing the amount of fat and other types of carbohydrates in the meal while still finding it tasty. Are there spices that you can add or other ingredients that you can add that are low calorie that will help maintain the taste for you? Another thing you can ask yourself is, when I get hungry, what are some high fiber or low calorie foods that I can eat? When you go to a restaurant, you want to ask yourself the same question. While you're looking at the menu, you want to ask yourself, what on here am I going to like that has a high amount of veggies, a good proportion of protein, and lower amounts of fat and carbs? Until you get the hang of it, I recommend using an app like Lose It. This is an app I use because it's free mainly whenever I'm trying to lose some weight or go on a diet. This will help you track whether you're staying within your calorie allowance. I also highly recommend getting a food scale. They're relatively cheap. I think they're $15 on Amazon, as well as reading the packaging on all the food that you eat for calories and protein. This is going to start to give you a sense of serving sizes. You don't have to do this for forever, just until you get a really good sense of it. I generally recommend doing it for 2 to 3 weeks. Me, for example, I use the Lose It app. I let it tell me my calorie deficit, which it has told me my budget is 1,513 calories. And I know since my ideal weight is about 150 pounds, I try to get 105 to 150 grams of protein a day. I also tend to eat 3 to 5 meals per day, so I try to get about 35 grams of protein with each meal. So you can see for this day here, my budget at the top, and if I scroll, it also shows me my breakdown of fat, carbs, and protein. If I click on protein, it shows me the breakdown in grams. So that day I had 177 grams of protein. I went over, which is never bad, but I stayed within my calorie budget. What I ate that day for breakfast, I love to have a protein shake with mixed berries and kale. So you can see that was 273 calories and 46 grams of protein. For lunch, I had some chicken with some farro salad with chickpeas and dates. And then as a little dessert after my lunch, I also had a second protein shake. I really like the way that they taste. So my lunch was 66 grams of protein. Then my dinner, I had some salmon, sweet potato, broccoli, and my treat is chocolate. And because I had some calories left over, I had some more chocolate. And basturma is a type of meat that Armenians love, or at least the Armenians in my immediate family love, including myself. So you can see that here. And that's it. That's how you make sure you are within your budget. Step 4 is you have to use your weight scale to adjust calories up or down. Here's why you can't just rely on those calculated maintenance calories. As we saw, everyone's BMR can be vastly different, and that calculation is assuming an average BMR. So if you are, for instance, below that average, and based on that you create your 500 calorie deficit, in actuality, you might just be breaking even and reaching your maintenance calories. Or the calculator is accurate, but something most people don't know is that food labels can be off in their calories by 20%. What that means is, although you think you've created a 500 calorie deficit and you're tracking your calories based on the food packaging and a weight scale, you haven't actually created a 500 calorie deficit. That's why you'll hear people say, see, calories in and calories out doesn't work for me. I tried that and I didn't lose any weight. It's not the equation itself. It's the tools that we have in order to determine what our calories in are. They are very blunt objects. The best tool that we have is the scale. The scale is king, but it also comes with caveats. Let's talk about how we use the scale and how we circumvent those caveats. Okay, you want to lose 1 pound of fat a week, but no more than that. Why? If you create a calorie deficit of greater than 500 calories, even if you're exercising and getting lots of protein, you'll start to lose muscle mass as opposed to fat. And we're really trying to lose fat. So 500 calories times 7 days is 3,500 calories per week, and that equates to about 1 pound of fat a week. So day to day, you'll be losing 67 grams of fat. This is what 67 grams looks like. But here's the thing. Your water weight, how much water you have in your body, can fluctuate 2 to 4 pounds a day. So your body weight can fluctuate, oscillate day to day 2 to 4 pounds, but this has nothing to do with the amount of fat that you're losing. Here is why this is so insidious and why it leads so many people, including myself, astray. You weigh yourself every day, you've started a new plan, it's going really well, and then on day 4, you weigh yourself and you've gained a pound from when you started. It's not fat. It's just water. So hard. I know. I have been there. Okay, how do we overcome this caveat? If we take your daily weight and average it per week, that is a far truer representation of how much fat you're losing. In this example, 3 weeks in, it looks like you've only lost 1 pound. But in actuality, if we look at the weekly averages, we can clearly see a consistent downward pattern. Here's the exact same table in graphical form. The jagged lines is your weight day to day. The smooth line is the weekly average. Trust the process. So this is so important. You want to record your weight on a daily basis, but don't be married to it. Be married to the process. Trust what's happening. It means that it could be up to 2 weeks before you realize that you're not losing any more weight and you need to make an adjustment to your calories or macronutrient composition. But 2 weeks in the grand scheme of things in the totality of your life is worth it. Trust me. As we know, muscle is denser than fat. So you may be losing fat. You may be shrinking in size, but your scale is not moving or maybe going up a little bit. If your weekly weight is not going down, but you are resistance training and you are getting stronger in the gym, higher reps, higher weights week by week, and your clothes are shrinking, then you are almost definitely still losing fat. A second measure you can take if you'd like is to get a tape measure and measure the circumference of your waist. Again, taking a weekly average. If that circumference is decreasing over time, even if the weight on the scale is not, you are most definitely losing fat. Keep going, don't change, nothing. Coming back to human psychology and human behavior, no matter how easy you find it, at some point you're probably going to hit diet fatigue. This is totally normal. This is the point where you're like, you just feel drained. You don't know if you can keep going. There is a reason bodybuilders and bikini competitors don't diet all year long. It's just not sustainable. So you shouldn't either. Here are some general rules that you can follow to help you. Don't diet for more than 8 to 12 weeks or 8 to 12 pounds at one given time. Once you hit 12 weeks, even if everything's going well, let your body recover a little bit by coming back up to your maintenance calories. You're going to go back to a calculator because now you are at a new weight to determine what your new maintenance calories are. You want to stay there for anywhere 6 to 16 weeks, or put another way, however long you dieted for, multiply that by 0.6 to 1.5. Once you've stayed at your maintenance calories, again, using your scale to make sure you're actually staying at those calories, you can go on to a second bout of dieting if you have more weight that you want to lose, keeping it to 8 to 12 pounds on your second bout, so on and so forth, and you can continuously iterate. The last important point I want to make is if you also include exercise, do not track it in your app. There is a part in the app that allows you to track exercise. Do not. Any exercise calories that you burn extra, they're bonus. If you find you are losing more than 1 pound of weight a week after adding exercise, then you can add a little bit of calories to your intake. But don't use the app to determine that. Use your weight per week average to determine that. Okay, you are now an expert on calories in and calories out. You have the tools that you need to reach the weight that you want and to do it in a way that feels good to you. I hope this helps somebody.